It started just after midnight, when the sky over Ouagadougou turned blood red. A low, menacing hum filled the Ira sound no one could trace, yet everyone felt deep in their bones. Panic spread like wildfire. Mothers held their children tighter. Soldiers in remote outposts gripped their rifles without knowing why. Something was coming, something foreign, precise, and deadly. Within hours, the streets emptied as an unmarked convoy rolled into the capital under tight surveillance. The vehicles were jet black. The men inside didn't speak. Their uniforms bore no insignias. But their movements, sharp, calculated, left no doubt. These were elite operatives. Russian commandos had arrived in Burkina Faso. The move was sudden, unexpected, and controversial. Only a handful of people knew the truth. Ibrahim Traoré, the young and fearless president of Burkina Faso, had received intelligence that a coalition of foreign mercenaries, backed by Western interests, had infiltrated the Sahel with one mission: destabilize the government and eliminate him. Traoré had long walked a dangerous path, daring to challenge neo-colonial powers, reclaiming his nation's gold, expelling exploitative mining firms, and arming his people against terrorists that the world claimed to fight, but secretly empowered. Now, the wolves had come for him. The first attempt on his life came 3 nights before the Russian commandos landed. A convoy disguised as humanitarian aid workers tried to breach the perimeter of the presidential palace. One sharp-eyed guard noticed something: Odin, AK-103, lying beneath a pile of grain sacks. A gunfight erupted. 4 attackers were killed. 2 escaped. Traoré wasn't harmed, but the message was clear. He was a marked man. That night, he summoned his most trusted advisors. Around the table, he said just one sentence: "If they bring wolves, we must call the bears." That was how the Russians came in, not as conquerors, not as occupiers, but as a wall between Traoré and those who would see Burkina Faso burn. They were called Zvezda, the Star, a Black Ops unit disavowed by the Kremlin, but feared globally for missions whispered about in Syria, Libya, and the Central African Republic. Each man had seen death more times than sleep. And now they had one assignment: protect Traoré with their lives. The first days passed in eerie silence. No public statements were made. The Burkinabe people only noticed that the night patrols were now faster, more organized. Drones buzzed quietly overhead. Unmarked helicopters appeared at dawn, scanning the horizon. And then, one morning, the truth surfaced. A convoy carrying Traoré's chief of intelligence was ambushed near the border of Mali. The attackers were well-trained, well-equipped, and brutal, but they weren't prepared for what followed. As bullets rained from the ambushers, a silent predator hovered above. A Russian-made Orlan 30 drone captured every movement. Within 5 minutes, 2 Mi-24 gunships descended from the clouds, guns blazing. What was supposed to be an assassination turned into a massacre, every attacker eliminated with ruthless precision. Video footage leaked online. The world was stunned. The message was clear: Traoré wasn't alone anymore. The presence of Russian commandos drew international outrage. Western leaders accused Traoré of inviting authoritarian forces. But within Burkina Faso, the people hailed him as a hero. "He doesn't bow, he fights for us," shouted a vendor in Bobo. Dieu Lasso. Songs were composed overnight. Streets were renamed. Young men volunteered for local militias, emboldened by what they saw: power protecting sovereignty. But Traoré knew this was just the beginning. The real war was not fought in the open, but in the shadows. The CIA, French DGSE, and private military companies like Bancroft and Aegis had all quietly deployed assets to Burkina Faso's neighboring regions. Their goal? To turn Traoré into the next Gaddafi, isolated, defamed, and ultimately dead. Zvezda operatives began intercepting strange signal-coded transmissions in French and English, originating from supposed humanitarian camps. Disguised mercenaries were infiltrating rural communities, stoking tribal conflicts, and recruiting young men with promises of cash. In the north, entire villages began disappearing overnight. Traoré demanded answers. "I want the source of every bullet. Find their supply routes. Find who trained them. I don't care if it's Paris or Virginia. Bring me names," he ordered. And they did. The Russians unearthed a covert base, disguised as a medical facility near the Niger border. Inside, they found crates marked as medical supplies, but filled with Belgian rifles and night vision gear. The medics were ex-special forces. They were planning an operation named Desert Eclipse, a full-scale coup, meant to paralyze the capital in under 6 hours. The plot was meant to strike at dawn on the 27th of May. Traoré didn't wait. 3 days before the planned coup, a combined operation of Burkinabe special forces and Russian commandos struck first. The attack was swift and surgical. Every mercenary was neutralized. Documents, satellite phones, and encrypted hard drives were seized. Among them was a chilling video, a Western diplomat speaking to a group of masked operatives, instructing them to cut off the head and the body will fall. But even as the threat was neutralized, Traoré grew more aware of the cost of standing for truth. Burkina Faso was becoming the epicenter of a new Cold War proxy battlefield between Western corporations, Islamic extremists, and rising Eastern powers. Each day brought a new assassination attempt, a new smear campaign, a new betrayal. One evening, a car bomb exploded outside the Russian compound in Ouagadougou. 3 Russian operatives died. Among them was Viktor Baranov, a decorated war hero who had once pulled Traoré from the line of fire. At his funeral, Traoré stood with clenched fists and tearful eyes. He looked into the cameras and spoke directly to the world. "They want chaos. They want to break us. But we will not kneel. This is not about me. This is about every African child who deserves to dream in peace. If I die, my blood will water the tree of freedom. But understand this, Africa is awake, and we're not afraid." That speech went viral. Millions watched. Protesters in Mali, Niger, and even Congo held signs reading, "We are all Traoré." Africa was rising. And so were the threats. One night, a high-ranking Burkinabe general attempted a silent coup. He had been bought off with millions in crypto payments, traced back to an offshore French bank. The plan was to poison Traoré during a state banquet. The wine glass had been tampered with. But what the general didn't know was that every food item Traoré consumed was pre-sampled by a Russian AI-driven analysis system, a gift from Moscow after the Syrian campaign. The poison was detected seconds before the toast. Zvezda moved in like shadows. The general didn't even get to finish his sentence. He was dragged from the hall, his screams echoing down the marble walls. Within an hour, a confession video was aired across all networks. He admitted to working with foreign agents and described detailed plans to kidnap Traoré's family and ship them to a remote island off the coast of Europe. The people erupted. The nation no longer saw Traoré as just a president. He was now a symbol of resistance. But symbols have enemies. On the anniversary of Burkina Faso's independence, a final attempt was made, this time more coordinated than ever. A strike team of international mercenaries breached the outer wall of the palace using advanced tunneling equipment. Their entry was silent, precise, deadly. They made it to the East Wing, where Traoré's war room stood. But Zvezda was ready. Sensors had picked up micro-vibrations underground. Traoré, dressed in full combat gear, stood with his men behind them. The ambush was turned inside out. A firefight exploded beneath the palace itself. Cameras captured Traoré disarming one of the attackers himself, his fists flying with the rage of a man who had bled too long for his country to fall now. When the dust settled, 18 attackers lay dead. One survived only to reveal the names of his financiers: 3 CEOs of mining corporations, 1 ex-CIA deputy, and a defense lobbyist from Brussels. That was the last straw. The next morning, Traoré signed a sweeping nationalization decree. Every foreign mining operation was shut down. Assets were seized. The gold would now feed the children of Burkina Faso, not foreign stockholders. And just like that, the people saw what courage looked like. Not in suits, not in speeches, but in scars. To this day, no one knows how many Russian commandos still operate in Burkina Faso. They move without names, without praise. But in the markets, the villages, the schools, they whisper stories of men with icy eyes who stood between their children and the darkness. And above all, they speak of a leader who didn't run, didn't kneel, and didn't die but chose instead to fight so that Africa may finally stand tall.